I'm Christine Toback. I am the new Women's Philanthropy President, and I think I know most of you. I have a 15-year-old in the public high school, and then an 8th grader right now at Eastern who is going to go to the public high school as well.
All right, Susan, you want to go?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Elkin. I know some of you. Hi, Robin. I haven't seen you in a long time. I'm on the board of GRS and have a 9th grader at Greenwich High School.
Allison, you want to go?
Okay, hi, I'm Allison Jackson. And I have 2 kids, a 6th grader and an 8th grader, both at Eastern. And my 8th grader will eventually go to public high school, so Greenwich High School next year. And I'm so happy to meet you guys who I don't know and see familiar faces. So thank you for inviting me onto this committee.
Thank you. All right, Stacy, you want to go?
Stacy Delicat, relatively new, although my family's been very involved with UJA for a long time, a newer member independently on my own, independent of my family. And my kids are younger. I have a 4.5-year-old at Temple Shalom. He's going to go to Riverside next year for kindergarten. And then my daughter is just 1.
And Erica?
Hi guys, I'm Erica Buxbaum. I'm here because Christine asked me to be here, and I would do anything for Christine. I have a senior at Greenwich High School, a sophomore at Greenwich Country Day School, and an 8th grader at Windward who will be going to Greenwich Country Day next year. And I'm excited to do this because I just became chair of a group at Greenwich Country Day called Stripes, which is sort of a bridge to the DEI program between the parents and the DEI program at the school. So I'm excited to be here.
Robin, you're next on my screen.
Hi, y'all. I'm Robin Leader. I have 3 kids in the public school. I have an 8th grader who is at Western and going to the high school. So Allie and Christine, we should get them together before school starts next year so they can, he's at Western. I know your kids are at different ones. So although Erica, he went to Windward, so he might have known your son at some point. And then I also have a 6th grader at Western and a 3rd grader. She's a girl at Parkway.
Okay, so Sally, you're next on my screen.
Sorry, I have some printing going on in the background for the moment. Hi, I'm Sally Mann. I have older kids who are out of the school systems, but have kind of bridged every high school that's in the area with them. And I have a younger one that is a junior at Greenwich Country Day. So I am really excited to learn about the Stripes program at Country Day because it sounds very interesting, and love to talk to you about it more, Erica.
Okay, and then I have Paul, who's Jamie, on the screen.
Yeah, I'll unmute myself. I'm going to also start my video for 1 second. I apologize. I am multitasking. You can see my enormous Costco order. I still have a little one who's got an early pickup. So I'm trying to scram. My name is Jamie Cosmodal. I have 3 kids in town. I'm here also for Christine Toback because I will do anything for her. My oldest is at Greenwich Academy. She's in 6th grade. I have a 4th grader at Brunswick, and my little one, who is 4.5, is at Whitby now, but she'll be at GA next year. So I am very happy to learn about this because, like, I feel that our schools in particular need some help.
Okay, all right, Marla, you're next on my screen.
Hi, everyone. I have a sophomore in college, and my youngest, my baby, is a senior graduating from Rye Country Day. I have been immersed in the diversity inclusion space for the last 5 or 6 years, doing a tremendous amount of research in the space and also working to create interactive experience that increase empathy and bring people together and help community build and bridge communities of belonging. Currently working on a digital platform right now to do that. And also head up at Rye Country Day, the Rye Country Day Community Connections, which is our parent connection to diversity work at the school. So happy to learn more.
Okay, we can learn from you, Marla. I know that. All right, Abby, you're next. Yeah, Abby, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Levy. I have 4 kids. My oldest is in 6th grade at Brunswick. I have a 4th grade girl and a 2nd grade girl at Greenwich Academy. And my little guy is at Chabad preschool right now, but he'll be going to Brunswick pre-K next year. And I'm happy to be part of this group and this initiative. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you, everybody. That's everybody, Claudia? No one's missing off my screen? Oh, you're on mute.
That is, yes.
Okay. All right, first of all, thank you everyone for just being here at 12 o'clock on a Monday. I know everyone's time is valuable. I don't have a formal agenda except that we have an opportunity because of diversity, equity and inclusion opportunities that are happening in all the schools. Everybody's revisiting. Can you raise your hand if everybody is aware that schools are revisiting racism? And okay, so we all kind of realize that. A couple of years ago, when I tried to start this model, there wasn't an open door of conversation happening. So it's an opportunity for us as a Jewish community to provide information to the schools that they might be receptive to for the first time in a long time. And I've had kids that went through private and public school, and there's misinformation in the system, and there's misinformation in the history classes, and there's misinformation, not intentional, but by accident from teachers, by what they Google or what's presented through a former older teacher plan. That's it. I mean, it's really, really simple. It's an opportunity for us to bridge sort of storytelling and differences. And, I know Marla could talk more about it, and I know Sally has a passion about it as well, to incorporate social justice as well as anti-Semitism and Holocaust education all together. It's not one or the other, it's a representation all together. I was just on a Zoom that the UJA sponsored that I know Christine was on, and the quote that was ended was, stand up for your own people as well as everyone else. And that's from Elie Wiesel. And I think that sort of encompasses the concept of what I think this portal or this conversation with the schools could be. Christine, do you want to add?
That's it. And I think somehow this is obviously the very beginnings of bringing people from all of these different schools together. And we're going to have to figure out some kind of an agenda and compile everything. But if you guys are the ones who are willing to possibly be those go-betweens and know the people at your schools to address these issues with them, that's what we need you for. And so I'm happy that all of you said yes, but this is in its infancy.
Yes. All right, so Claudia, oh yes, go, Susan, ask a question, please. Everybody ask questions.
Are you guys talking about going so far as to create a curriculum? Is that what you're thinking?
No, what we're trying to do is create there's content out there, which Claudia is going to put up on the screen, because the reason it's so timely now is because of all the Zoom that we've been doing for the last year. Some of the most reliable sources and organizations now have all of this on Zoom, right? It's all available, easily accessible, with different titles and different headings that I think if we provided to any teacher in the country, they'd be probably very happy with.
Okay.
So I think, let's ask any other questions right now. Otherwise, I think maybe Claudia show us, the classrooms without borders. Okay, yeah, click on that.
Where do you want me to click?
Classrooms without borders. Can I do that? No. Can you open that? The Classrooms Without Borders curriculum?
Okay, 1 second.
No, take your time.
Pam is going to help with the screen sharing.
Okay. So let's do Classrooms Without Borders, which is an organization that Pam and I were talking to prior to COVID, in the hope, my hope has been for years to provide opportunities for history teachers to go to Israel. Because everybody knows a hands-on experience is transformative. Everybody says so. So Classrooms Without Borders now does all kinds of curriculum. Okay, so let's go let's go. This is just a sample of what's easily available that we could put in a portal, okay? Like the key between our relationships here is because of the DEI opportunities, we can present to the schools a portal to say, hey, here's some other ways to provide information to your teachers for some of these challenging topics. So if you go, let's start from the beginning, because I think it was on racism. Okay, so now go up or down depending on, no, keep going up. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Can you keep going?
Hold on. What do you want to see? Lesson plans? What do you want to see?
No, I wanted to see when you open it, you first open it, it gives you.
If you scroll down to the bottom, there was Classrooms Without Borders. If you go back one.
Oh yeah, you're not on page, I don't know how you got there, Pam, sorry. Okay, so, okay, here, so wait, go stop, sorry, you're going too fast, go back up. So these are just some of the teaching about race, racism. It's not just anti-Semitism, and it's not just the Holocaust. It's an all-encompassing portal that can provide information to teachers. I dug into some of them. I didn't dig into all of them. So if you can keep definitions for understanding structural racism, okay, keep going up or down, just get to the bottom.
It's interesting to know that they have already sourced this
yes.
from ADL and Facing History.
And the Aspen Institute, Understanding Race. So this is it's a portal unto itself that it's picked from some of the best institutions about some of these topics. Here you have the PBS. Then there's here we have key principles for teaching the Holocaust, Holocaust Online. The eyewitness ones are amazing to have one voice at a time. We all know storytelling and narrative is so important. You can keep going. Here's L.A. Wellsell's Night. Then there's a whole section on anti-Semitism. Now, this is just one website that's available to anybody, but how would the schools know to access it, or how would they find it? It's so hard, there's so much information. And if we could be a trusted resource for correct information, I think it's a gift to kids in school now and for eternity in our community.
Just so everybody knows, the 8th graders across the district are reading the book Night right now in their English class.
Yes.
And I did organize with Pam for the Western, and we can send it obviously to Central and Eastern as well if they're interested, a recording of today's the thing this morning that I couldn't join, the UJA Zoom about the book. And she was very interested. She had a class at the time and couldn't join, but she said she would definitely share it with the other teachers. And the social studies and English classes right now are doing a social justice unit. It's their current unit. So it's definitely very timely.
So what happens, Robin, though, is then you have the history teacher in a lot of the private schools who are doing the programming, they're learning simultaneously the same topics, and then a map is shown of Israel, and it doesn't say Israel, it says Palestine. And that doesn't happen in every class, and it's not intentional, but it does happen. It happened at Brunswick. And so if we have a map in here, instead of them going Google, map of the Middle East, they have a trusted source of what is correct, right? Instead of the false information that we know is, again, not intentional, but is bombarded by sources that have ill intent. There are people out there who have ill intent, and teachers don't always know that or aren't aware what they're taking from the web. Okay, so this is just one website, and then let's go to the other one that Pam just put up before, Facing History, which is an amazing organization. Marla, do you know about that one?
Yeah, I work with them. They're great.
Right. Pam looks like she's looking for it. So Facing History and Ourselves. I mean, all of these definitely have a little bit of clearly a Jewish bend, but we should be standing up for ourselves. We should have a seat and a voice at the table. And this is the first opportunity, I think, that we can have a voice at the table and represent our story fairly in conjunction with all the other stories that are going on in each of our children's schools. Okay, so I don't think we should open any of these specifically. These would have to be vetted. We'd have to look at them. We'd have to make sure they're aligned with the messaging that we want to send out there. But for the most part, I think there's a lot of really great stuff and content already there. So
Brian, sorry, just to cut in with Facing History, they do training I've done work with them because, just adding this for context, they work with 3GNY, which is third generation Holocaust survivors of New York, teaching third generation survivors how to tell their grandparents' stories. So I can vouch a little bit for Facing History.
Yes, and I've been to several of their events in New York City. One of our board members was very active with it. Okay, so what questions do people have? Because please just ask ideas, throw it out. This is super new. We're just trying to get it off the ground, trying to find out your sentiments.
I have a question. When in calling it a portal, to me, portal brings to mind the horror of Stanford Hospital, Greenwich Hospital, my school portal. I have a very negative connotation with that word.
Yeah, I thought that this morning too, as I was trying to get J&J.
So many passwords, so much stress. Yeah. But to me, what it's sounding like, this is more of a committee of parents in the community with representation at different schools who will bring a voice to Jewish education and awareness and sensitivity to our DE&I programs within our schools. Is that what the goal is here?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because Susan had asked if
we can change the name today. Like we are brand new. If normally you'd be sitting in my living room and we'd be having coffee and something, but right now this is what we can do. So I am open to all ideas. This is not cemented in any way, shape, or form. So what could we call it? Because the name does mean a lot and is important.
What were you calling it before?
Well, we were just calling it the portal just because that just.
Oh, but it didn't have any modifiers in front of portal.
No, it was just.
It's really new.
Yeah. This is the ideas. Yeah. Anyway, it's I don't know, Erica. I didn't write down what you said. I'm usually a note.
I don't have a name.
I'm a note taker, but like,
maybe something with resource in it.
It's a committee which will be part of the UJA. It's a committee on Jewish education and it's also Israel should maybe be, I don't know what you want the focus to be, but
equality.
Well, I know Marla has a lot of buzzwords. I loved bridging differences. I know I learned that from her in her little last time we spoke. Because it can't be just Jewish, it has to be more encompassing, otherwise we won't be successful.
And you want something like there's some history you have, that's part of it. There's a historical bent when we're teaching the Holocaust, and the history of Israel. This is actually a very large sort of subject matter that you want to. So I think you're going to need a more general name.
And I think it's okay for Judaism to be part of what we do. I don't think to me, it's part of the UJA, and that is the focus is Jewishness. And I think all of our schools have DE&I programs which cover race, gender, ethnicity, religion, but we would be the voices in the community to make sure Judaism, anti-Semitism, Israel are part of the curriculum or part of the discussion. And maybe I'm wrong. I just don't know. Is that what your thought was, or you want?
Yes, it was. It is definitely to provide a narrative and information that's correct, and to provide a resource for teachers as these topics come up in their classrooms. and to be proactive in providing the information. So maybe they, you know, veer in a little bit of a different direction, especially in private schools where you have more freedom to explore and to dig around for information.
It might be worthwhile talking to a few teachers at the private schools about what their lesson plans are surrounding something like the Holocaust and where they get their information from now. I can tell you at Country Day last year in 8th grade, Annabelle had an outstanding introduction to the Holocaust, very gritty and factual, not at all whitewashed or glossed over, and it was extremely effective. And the teacher was very adamant that it be that way to really bring it home. And I think finding out where maybe some people who do seem to have a handle on this already are getting their information from might be just good information for us to have to start.
Yeah. Would you mind, Susan, asking that teacher?
Sure.
That would be really helpful. And
Okay.
there's a teacher at GA also in 8th grade that my daughter had, who also took it very seriously.
Sally, did your daughter have Miss Aronowski?
She's actually still very close to her.
Yeah, that was
a mentor of hers. Yeah.
Yeah, she even sent home a letter to parents saying that she was showing film footage and real photographs. And if you didn't want your kids to see that, you know, this was the heads up. But okay, I'll give her a call.
Teacher. So can I, just going back to what Erica said, though, I think that it is like a philosophical decision that we have to make, because if I'm hearing Erica correctly, you're saying we should maybe stay out of the other subject matters because there's so much information from so many different directions and sources that maybe we should be, since we're Federation, UJA-JCC, very focused on what we're supplying. Is that what you're?
I mean, that's my natural inclination.
Yeah.
I just feel like these schools they're already doing this work, and we can't be experts on everything. And I feel like if we stick to the Jewish/Israel/anti-Semitism aspect, we would get more traction and be able to really hone in. But I could be wrong, and I could be convinced otherwise if anybody has opinions.
Well, I think that we can also like the history of the Jewish people and the history of the Black people and the civil rights movement really do overlap and did in the 60s, but now they've really kind of separated, and based on Israel and Palestine, I think is kind of the take that's happening. But at the very beginning, they were partners. So I think that it is important to kind of lay it over with equality and race. Just a little.
But I guess it's a question of how deep we get into it, and will we get more traction presenting that we're kind of here to represent all, or do we get more traction to saying we have more of a specialty in this focus? Is the question. You know, with the schools, which way would they be more receptive?
Well, I think I've been working very closely with Right Country Day and their the revamping diversity inclusion, which they've been working on for years. It's very difficult to influence curriculum in a school. So I can tell you with the private, I can't speak to Greenwich High, but I can speak to Right Country Day, Horace Mann. They don't want to hear from us, as like curriculum is within their wheelhouse, right? So overall DEI curriculum. So they have their own, right now they have consultants in there, and even to move the needle on how diversity, inclusion, equity work is being done in the school is very systematic, right? So they're looking at, oh, sorry, I just lost power. Can you guys hear me still?
Yes.
Okay, all right, everything else just went dark in my house. Internet's still on. But it's interesting, I'm just thinking out loud. I think where we could have impact is making sure that Jewish identity and Holocaust is something that is included into curriculum, because right now, not just in schools, but in corporations, religion is often left out of DEI education. It's something that people have not wanted to include. And it's like politics and ideas and religion are something that people don't address. I can tell you that it's really incumbent upon parents to bring Holocaust survivors and education to the schools, and without push and parents within the school, it doesn't happen because it's not on the teacher's radar. So I think it could, like, for example, if for Yom HaShoah, and I think it's important with diversity work that it's built into calendar naturally. So for example, if it's Yom HaShoah or it's other holidays, or if as a community we can come together and provide, whether it's a Zoom talk or something, that we're providing Survivor, if we're lucky enough to have that, or some other programming, if then you can have representatives go to schools and say it, at the beginning of the year, actually, and say, Yom HaShoah is on this date. We'd like to be able to bring this program to your school. It's very important. And you speak to the diversity inclusion folks at the school. We don't often get representation. And it's really important that you do this. And we have a program that we'd like to bring, and all the other schools in the area are bringing this, and would you join in? Like, I think that's a really good opportunity, because I know that, like, at Right Country Day, the survivors that have come, it's because I've brought them. And if I don't raise my voice to do it, it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. The idea of well, we're not calling it a portal, but for ease of conversation, Erica, we're going to call it a portal. The idea of the portal was to get our foot in the door. So the idea of having a presentation of things for teachers' potential is to say, for Susan and Christine and whoever else, to reach out to people and say, hey, we've got this up and running. We'd love for you to look at it. So it's a door opener. So I think the portal or whatever is easy enough to put together, right? Like it exists, it's broad, there's lots of different content, we can move it around and not put all of it in. And then that opens a conversation like, hey, this is out there for you, for educators and for your school and for whoever. And whether they use it or not, that's not our call, right? Like changing plans is very difficult. But it gets us giving them information for free and access to something that they do or don't have. Susan's going to find out where that particular teacher got that information, which would be fantastic to know. And then we say, we have these great speakers. We'd love to have them come to your school for Holocaust remembrance or other particular occasions. So I see it as a first step to opening a door, because we're just giving them something and we're not asking them to do anything. Does that sort of make sense?
Brianna, do we know what the schools in Connecticut are doing? Because this legislation was passed, which you may have mentioned, I came late, in Connecticut, that schools must teach Holocaust and genocide education. Do we have any sense of how that's playing out in the local public schools or private schools in Connecticut?
I do not, but I do know of the legislation.
I mean, they've been doing genocide all year in both my kids' classes. They talked about I can't pronounce it, but outside oh my gosh, they've done different, not just Judaism, but I want to say it's like begins with a U, human, or anyway.
Uyghurs or
Uyghur, yes. Yeah. Jamie did that this year. So
oh, Robin, you're on.
Sorry, I muted myself as I was talking. Just from listening, I think we actually are going to have two different tracks for public and private, because I think public is much more like, we can go right to Victoria Bowling, who's the humanities coach, who works with all of the science and social studies. She's in the Board of Ed, with the Board of Ed, and I can easily, we can set up a meeting through that. And I'm also on the PTA council, and I can bring this up at roundtables so all the schools know that we have it. just this week in PTAC, North Miamis is actually starting a whole diversity campaign as well, and was talking to other schools about that. So they're definitely, everybody, I think the timing for this is brilliant because I think it's definitely on everybody's minds. I can find just on the Greenwich Public School website what their curriculum is in terms of the new legislation, the genocide, etc. Because it'll all be there, or I can reach out to Victoria, it's fine. The one thing I would mention though is that we can't leave out of the equation, because I think as a masses, they're crazy, but as a masses, they're fine, but I think you can very easily get crazy parents who will reject sort of everything. So as my example for this, it came up in our Western exec board meeting this week. One of the teachers in the social justice unit had a poster on the wall that was fine, and did a survey for the kids. And granted, the parent who complained happened to be on the exec board and didn't know what the whole conversation the teacher is having ahead of time, but she lost her lid over this survey. And it turned out the survey was an adult one, it shouldn't have been with kids, and blah, blah. There were all these reasons for it not to happen, but it blew up to this level you would not believe over curriculum in the school, and a poster that she saw when she was looking in on the remote learning for her child. So, and neither of which I thought was particularly offensive. I could see how people didn't like some of it, but I wouldn't have said it was blow up level. So I just want to preface everything with saying people are crazy, and we need to watch how much we really did. I wouldn't have thought any of this was, she didn't want social justice taught at all. She thought her kid in 8th grade was too young to learn about atrocities. So like there is that whole aspect too, right? Like our whole conversation, I was like, of course they have to learn it. And yes, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade is exactly when you learn it. She's like, you know, whatever, crazy. And so I don't want us to forget that it's not just the teachers we sort of have to be thinking of. It's also the parents who are going to see the information.
Right. Well, I mean, in the ideal world, the parents would have access to whatever, however we title this also. It's open to everybody. We're going to create the forum for it, and then the public can have it. Like it's not confined to just Greenwich. It can be available to everybody and to parents when they're questioning racism and anti-Semitism or whatever. So I don't want to be the teacher, and I don't want to tell people what to teach. I just want to offer the opportunity and a foot in the door to have a conversation if it comes up, and a place for someone to go if they're interested in exploring beyond what they're already doing. And that eventually over time, schools could then rely on the Jewish community to then have more people come. And, you know, it's a trajectory. It's just a foot in the door. And how do we get there? And what's the best way to do it in the easiest format and not make it so complicated that it becomes burdensome and we can't do it?
So do you think that the best way to do this for this year is to figure out who the information would need to go to and just compose a letter and with the websites attached to it and highlight maybe some lessons that might be relative to maybe what if your children are learning something in school, you could relate maybe a particular lesson for that age group. Like, let's say I was writing a letter to the public school, which I have no idea how this works, but Robin, it sounds like you know exactly how the public school works. So I'm so happy you're on this call. And highlight that, from the Classrooms Without Borders website, there are 2 really great lesson plans on night, and they're titled this and this, and that be maybe like the first entry into what's happening this year. And then for next year, what Marla was saying, like to kind of, have a meeting at the beginning of the school year with whoever your contact person is, or you've identified, or maybe you've had a couple more conversations over the summer with them, and then say, hey, at the beginning of the year, Yom HaShoah is on this day. I'd like this and this to be introduced, and maybe have a Holocaust speaker if you need information about this, or, you know, I don't know, funds. We're not offering funds. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, yeah,
Maybe we would. I have no idea. But
let's not rule any of that out.
Okay.
I don't think this is about money at this point.
No, but let's say that, you know, we're willing to bring a speaker, even if it's a Zoom speaker or a recorded, you know, Zoom, for it to be more relatable to your lessons that you have. And so then it can start to, you know, then it's layering upon what they already have and what's happening in the school year, as you're more aware of what's happening in your child's year. I don't know. Maybe anyone?
I think before we go to the schools, we need to have exactly what we're compiled.
Yeah.
I would start with that, like make sure we have our complete portal.
Yeah.
And then we start introducing it out. I don't think we want to make all our connections and then keep handing them more and more and more information.
I'm with you, Robin. It's, again, this is not supposed to be a barrier that we can't overcome. And it's like the content's there. I think as a committee, we should come as a consensus. What do we want to put in that portal? Okay, we need a different word. Okay, someone needs to brainstorm a different word than portal, because that whole vaccine.
You're basically looking to create your own website that's an aggregate website, right?
Yeah.
That has our own content, you know, sort of like editorial content that brings together all these different things that they can just go to and click on.
Yeah.
So
Like
Like classroom resources.
Like a resource center.
yeah.
Or playlist is a big word in the public school right now. Like everything they have is a playlist. Like, you know, here are your 5 assignments. That's what they consider a playlist. Like just things they go through down.
Like a Spotify playlist?
I hate using that word though when we're talking about the Holocaust. It's like, it doesn't seem very
Fair enough.
I don't know how involved creating a website is a big deal. Getting the rights to put other people's information on your website.
That's what I was gonna ask.
To me, just, I don't know, it sounds like a lot of work. Whereas if this is just a committee, to me, this is a committee of Jewish moms who want to let their schools know. And I'll encourage my fellow Jewish friends at, let's say, Country Day, to go to their teachers and say thank you when they cover something in a wonderful way about Judaism. Or just, I feel like we need to first, like Marla said, you can't go in and tell a private school what to do, what to teach, who to bring in as a speaker. But getting acquainted with our school's curriculums around these issues, for me, it's like a fact-finding mission. I mean, Robin, you sound so knowledgeable about all of this, but I am not as knowledgeable and need to learn a lot more. Finding allies within the schools, like this teacher who, Sally, you said your daughter is close to. I mean, she sounds like a great person just for me to talk to at the school to find out what is going on this topic, and Susan too.
You should talk to her and Lauren Waller. I'll give you their name.
Yeah, I love her. I will call her too. But fact finding, see what they're doing already. And then this group, I mean, it does sound like public and private are very different. That doesn't mean we can't work together to share information. I think it just means the approach will be different for each of us. And I think every school is so different, and we just need to know our school's cultures and people, and know, you know, get to know how to sort of be there as a resource for them. But if you want to create a website, that's something different than I thought. I mean, that is a true portal. That sounds like a lot. And Marla, you look like you know about this a lot. So.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, well, for the private schools, so for both Rye Country Day and Horace Mann, we have portals, not for teachers, but for parents of information. But I do think it is difficult because like I know, and our teachers use Facing History. So they have these websites and these are their resources at the school. I do think where they're really just having this conversation, I think is really helpful, because for me, seeing where there's weaknesses, there is weakness in having Judaism and Israel and teachers being knowledgeable about these subjects and knowing, and especially in the history departments, right? So I'm thinking, even if there's a pamphlet, or a digital resource that we can create that people can then bring to, sit down with the school's diversity inclusion folks or heads of the school or whoever our connections might be, and say, I want to understand how Holocaust is being taught. I want to, in what grades it's taught, and where in your curriculum there are books or not books. Where is it? Because as our schools are revamping curriculum to be more inclusive and include diversity inclusion, I don't think they're thinking about Judaism as being part of that, the same way they haven't been thinking about Asians as being part of that. And so the Asian community within these schools is fighting to be more included. And so are other people, right? So I do think there's a role for us to be ambassadors, to one, go and sit down with diversity inclusion offices, heads of schools, heads of high school, middle schools, just to understand. I'm just curious where we are represented in the curriculum. So everyone's trying to make sure there's books on different things. Are there books even in the lower school about being Jewish? Because those should be in the library and they should be part of the curriculum, as should every other religion, right? Also, I think once we gather that information, and so I think having representatives to set meetings and figure out this information, then once we have that information and we know if we're represented, if we're not, if we're poorly represented, I think in speaking to students, and especially high school students, and kind of surveying, you can also get some of this information. So without going to the school, our students know more than anything what type of anti-Semitism happens in the classroom, how they're meant to feel uncomfortable, and how people are, how these subjects are being taught, if at all. Then I think you can figure out what type of resources you might be able to offer, to advocate and say, when you teach the Holocaust, there's never a survivor, or these books you're reading the same story. And also, I think Judaism, I think a lot of the schools feel that by covering the Holocaust, they teach about Jews.
Okay.
But also, Jews are not like Ashkenazi normative, right? Like we're always thinking about a certain picture of Jews. And I think that's important to show a wide variety of Jews, and make sure that those are in the libraries of the lower school, the middle school, the upper school, and also curriculum as well, and just offer those as resources.
That doesn't sound that easy. Marla, oh my gosh. Okay, so we have Susan talking to one teacher. It sounds like Erica has a teacher or someone to talk to through Sally, right? Did I get that right?
I work closely with the head of DE&I at Country Day, so I'll talk to her, and I'll also talk to this teacher that Sally mentioned and some other.
Okay, and Robin, you sound like you know so much. I mean,
I can with anybody, if Allie or Christine want to join me, try and reach out to the humanities coordinator for Greenwich Public Schools. Or we can do there's Lori Elliott, there's somebody that does the elementary schools, and there's somebody else that does the secondary. So we can reach out.
Do we want to have a list of questions that we're all asking, the same questions at least, so we all can come back together and say, this is different schools have different sentiments? Like, what would those questions be?
Well, I think like the libraries was a great point, right? Like, what is inclusion in your libraries? Do you need more? Because I would guess, at least for the elementary school, I certainly have a lot of PJ library ones here I could donate. But the inclusion in the libraries, I think, is a great question to ask.
That's a good idea. Just the PJ library collection of books, to donate those books to the different elementary schools in Greenwich, right? Like,
yeah, the point that we're all talking about is now's the time. Like, the door is open, which is why we're all on this screen. This has never happened before, where the schools kind of have to be like, oh, you have a voice too, and we kind of have to listen to you. Whereas a couple years ago, you know what, they were like, we don't need to hear you. Now they have to. So like, this is it. Like whatever it is, we got to do it this year and next year, because the door's going to close, because everyone's going to have it up to here and be done. And this is for the future of the kids in Greenwich. And having a daughter who went to GA, I mean, Sally has a different experience maybe, and you know, for the private schools, but the high school at GA and Brunswick was not, it was anti-Semitic. Jews were privileged. They had more points than, like, my daughter came home one day and devastated. She's like, Mom, they did this program, and if you were white and male and Jewish, you had more points and more privilege than anybody. And if you were Black and something like there's poor Jews in the world. Not everybody is rich. Not everybody is how they're perceived. Just like we're saying, they need to have books that represent all different aspects of Judaism and not just this white privilege, which yes, there is definitely exists, but it shouldn't be the narrative that the 10th graders are learning in an auditorium. And then what does that spread for the future? That's not a positive message, and that's happening in schools all over. So anyway, it's not. She talked to all of her friends, and they were not favorable towards Israel at all, which you're entitled to, but in a way that was anti-Semitic. It's anti-Zionism, and that pervades a lot of our kids' schools. So we need to make some inroads to show a different perspective and picture.
Well, you could package, again, it starts, the easiest way to get in is with the younger students, right? And this is where our perceptions start.
Yeah.
Out of St. Louis, there's a group that's focused on bringing in books about people of color, particularly Black people, BIPOC, the BIPOC community. And, you know, again, it's making sure libraries are, and they have parent groups. It's mainly for white, it's book clubs for parents and children that are for white families to learn more about people who are of color. But I'm thinking that in a way, in addition to bringing the books that we'd want in a lower school library about Judaism, and even Israel, not in a very, like, Israel's a beautiful country with lots of people, you know, even if there were books that you chose, but then maybe packaging them with books about other underrepresented groups. So if it took from the We Stories curriculum out of St. Louis and took what they really love, their books, like the books that they value people reading and getting in the classroom, and you pick some on the Asian population, and you pick some on LGBTQ, but you put our stories within there, or, you know, or if it's just a list, you know, but these are books. But that's a pretty easy thing to do. But again, and it's a very sensitive topic. So we are experts in us, and we can speak to us. When we start to be experts on other groups and we're all white, that becomes sometimes the diversity inclusion offices don't necessarily want to take that information from us too. So I'm just putting that out there, but they don't necessarily want us, we're not experts on that. So we could, you know, source, We Stories has recommended these books and we've sourced them from other groups, but we are the experts of us. But right now, especially, it's very sensitive. Even if you talk about Black-Jewish relations and things like that, we're not necessarily the ones to think about it. And I've been immersed in just Black-Jewish dialogue and conversations, and I know I'm not the one to be leading that discussion. Can be part of it, but I'm learning in that area.
So that goes to Erica's point that maybe we do stay streamlined and focused instead of trying to be broader and more.
Yeah, I think we'll get ourselves in hot water otherwise. But I will say that I'm doing some work for Diane's books that I do every year. And this year, because of COVID, it's not going as normal. And the 3 schools we work with were the kids that house the Title I kids. They're asking for books that reflect diversity. not on diversity, but just, you know, are not, you know, so that they definitely want these in their schools, in their libraries and whatnot. I would also say, and I'm sorry I lost Pam before I brought this up, that she and I were on a conversation with the YW and the new DEI leader, or the woman that they've hired, who seems very dynamic. I know they're trying to do some outreach to the schools as well. And I think it would probably behoove us to find out specifically what they're doing and see if we work hand in hand with them on this, because I think the schools will also be very receptive probably to the YW, or, you know, just so we're not duplicitous, and also we can kind of maybe
I would add the boys
together.
and girls group to the YW because they do a lot with the Title I kids as well.
Yeah.
So.
Right, but I think that the YW is talking about all the schools in town, or at least all the public schools, not just, you know, the Title I kids.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think they're working with the YW as well.
Okay.
Boys and Girls Club. I think there's a little group
Sally, do you want to reach out to her?
Sure.
And
Yeah, I'll try to understand a
get
little
some
bit deeper.
feelers. I'm sure she'd welcome a call, and it gives you an opportunity to make a deeper connection with her. And you know,
I would love to. I'll be glad to.
Yeah, that would be great, because that would be curious to see how she feels about it.
Right.
The other phrasing that actually came up when we were talking about the survey, that Mr. Beinstein, the Western principal, had said that I think is very good for us to make sure we're telling people, is that we're promoting information, not indoctrination.
Oh,
right?
without a doubt,
You know what I mean? But like, that was like the big thing this parent happened to be worried about, is that the teacher's viewpoint was coming out. And I think we should be very clear that all our information is just information, and there's no sort of, aside from the fact that it's Jewish based, there's no real viewpoint. It's not good or bad, it's just information.
And that is
that
true.
That we're expecting the teachers to present it that way.
Yes.
Not to present it as, you know, Israel is bad. Like here's a picture of Israel and it's bad. We're expecting them to just say, here is Israel.
Yeah.
So.
I think that something like this, less is possibly better. Less could be more. And also I find specifically with the public school teachers, they've got a lot to sift through. And if we're going to be sending them to some kind of a toolbox or some kind of a resource center that is where they have to then do work to sift through all the information to find a lesson plan that they can create, that might be off-putting to them or frustrating. So it might be easy if it's basic, simple, straightforward, clear messaging. And if they want to get more information, they can then go and research, you know, if they're thinking of creating something in addition to that.
Well, so then from that point and from what the sense is, maybe we really need to find out, right, dig deep and find out how could we be helpful, right? That would be a better task to say, okay, what do schools really want? And Susan's going to find out, and Sally and Erica and whoever else is going to talk to their teachers. How could we be helpful in this moment in time? And what resources would be good to have? I suppose that would be a better approach than shoving a portal with tons of information that is hard to sift through, because it's a lot of information.
And I love the idea about the books. We have tons of PJ library books that we could share. We really do. That's you know, the schools are always, especially public, any school is welcoming to get, you know, books.
Well, actually the libraries are very challenging because they have a coding system that's very specific, and they don't accept books so readily.
Yeah, and they're very particular. Like, they're experts in this, and they want to pick the books. Like, they're not looking for just general donations. They're very, I'm the expert in what books are right for my kids.
Yeah,
but I don't know, but I'll say that because I've been doing, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
doing
Yeah,
this
go ahead.
working with Title I kids for years. And this year, because we can't get to the specific kids, it was a pretty open forum of, if you can give us books that reflect diverse family styles and people, that they weren't being so particular. But maybe it's,
are they going home or living in the library?
No, living in the library and or in classrooms.
So Sally, can we get you PJ library books?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for these three schools, they were looking more, you know, for, you know, kind of more racial and kind of that's not the right, not the right terminology there, but just, I don't know that they're, but yes, you can give me some, I can.
They're not looking for the Jewish diversity.
But they could certainly,
That's
I'm
precisely
sure.
why we need to embed it in the other books.
Yeah. I think
Yes.
that- no,
So I
why
think
not
if
to?
you put together a collection.
Yeah.
And it's a collection that represents everyone in Greenwich, right? So the goal is that every child should be able to see themselves.
That's exactly what they're trying to.
And so in that collection should be books on Jewish
Right.
children.
Agreed.
And Jewish kids doing normal thing. Like it doesn't have to be like, this is about Judaism.
Right.
It's
No,
a story about a Jewish girl and her bubby.
Correct.
And so that is the way that you change hearts and minds, by normalizing seeing Jewish people, Black people, Muslim people, gay people. And so if we can put together a collection that includes the Jewish story, that's the way you get the Jewish story in, versus just coming and saying, here's a bunch of Jewish books. But I think we can say we're not represented either in your libraries. And not in the way, because, and so if the librarians are choosing stories, they're not experts on what books should be included from the Jewish perspective. So I do think there's an opportunity for us to be ambassadors and say, as part of diversity and inclusion, just as it's important in a classroom for people early to read books about Black children and see Black children being all different types of things and looking all different, looking different and feeling different and having different stories, it's really important at a very young age to have stories with Jews in them as well.
At our school, we at Country Day, they have a DEI book club. We just finished How to Be an Anti-Racist, and we're talking about future books we're going to discuss. And some of the parents, I mean, we're so bummed it's ending. We met every other week, and we all have become friends outside, have our own, communication now. But one of the parents asked if we could do a book on LGBTQ theme, and I'm happy to propose a book on some aspect of Judaism. I mean, I think we all just need to be voices in our schools.
Oh, Erica, I lost
Erica,
you.
you froze. Like at the most important
Beautiful
part.
moment, yeah.
Erica,
Erica, that was.
should I call her?
She's obviously having some power issues.
Well, my light definitely flickered here. I don't know about you, Susan.
No.
Your lights didn't flicker when.
There you are.
Oh, there you are, Erica. Wait, we
Sorry,
lost you with the
having
most
power
important.
issues.
Okay, yeah, we lost you at the most important part.
Voices in our schools, and then I lost you.
Erica, how do we become part of that? I'll email you on the side.
So Erica, you're going to finish telling us your great trend of thought there?
She has power issues. She lost audio.
Oh, she lost audio. Okay. Oh, now she's gone.
She left us in suspense.
Oh dear. Okay, well, we have this is why we need to do this, because it's a lot of great ideas, and we have people asking certain questions. Library, how do we want to handle that? Does people want to look through their library? They want to talk to librarians? Do we want to just focus on lower school?
I mean, I don't have any lower school
Right.
kids anymore.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are in the middle school, and I don't remember the last time they were in their middle school library choosing a
Yeah.
book.
Why don't
Yeah.
for Greenwich Public Schools, why don't I reach out to Parkway's librarian and just ask her for an overview of what she knows of the public school, elementary schools. And she might not know anything. It might be they might be a standalone, in which case, I guess we could call all of them. But I'll start with her. That's not a problem.
Okay, so I think the goal, though, for us is to present ourselves as a united community with this prospect of being able to make some inroads into our prospective schools. And like Erica said, it's it's simple in some sense because we're just individuals and we can make some impact independently. But we want to unify the process a little bit so we know that there's no holes, right? We want it to happen across the school district, and to, then if we don't do a portal or we don't do a playlist, we do it more independently, that we pass the baton to the next person, right? So when someone's moving out of a school, who's covering that school now? Because it has to be a continuation if we really want to be effective, and not just a one-off for this group and then that's that. So that requires, organization and constant emailing and whatever. So we'll maybe meet again in another 2 weeks. Does that sound right? And people do fact finding on their own. Oh,
Brianna, I just wanted to ask a question. I'm popping back in on video. Yeah. It would be helpful, like to your point of just being unified, it would be very helpful. I know everyone here is on a lot of committees, we're all kind of have our hands in a lot of different pots. If you guys could send out, I don't want to say a script, but that we're all sort of like, I love the idea of asking the schools, how can I help? What do you need? So that we're all sort of going about it with tweaks in this sort of same strategy. It's super helpful to me because one day I could be doing this and tomorrow I could be planning Earth Day, so which is a different dialogue. So I just want to make sure I am approaching it, in the most clear, concise, professional manner.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be nice if we had a playlist. I mean, a cheat sheet. What is it? What questions? So I don't know if anyone feels like they want to create those questions. I mean, Christine and I could talk about it, but it seems like we have a lot of really smart people here. Who we had one. I mean, the one question came up. I don't even remember what it was, but it was a good one. Oh, well, where do teachers get their information? I mean, that was Susan's question, which was a very good one. But if no one's jumping at creating the list of questions, we'll get it out to you because I think that is really valuable. And maybe
maybe you start it and put it on a Google Doc, and people can, if you give us, the ability to write on it, we can add to it or ask.
I have a question, Sally, and maybe that goes to this. Don't we also need to know what year this curriculum is taught in? Because I know, for instance, right, like they don't teach this every year in any grade. In 8th grade, they're learning the Holocaust at Country Day. They did not learn about it in 7th grade. I don't even know what happens in the high school. Does it even come up? Unless you take a specific history course about World War II.
Yeah.
So,
I think they read a book in 6th grade. Yeah, I think every school probably has a different, and it'd be an interesting and good question to find out.
Yeah. So
where hot years are.
That would be one of them. And then I just wanted to say that my 2 cents is that I do think getting in young is important, really young.
Yeah. I wasn't really thinking so young. It's probably an easy entry too.
Yeah. I mean, Country Day is like, so good on all of this. They care so much about diversity and getting it right and making sure everyone is represented. And I do think that they will be actually very open to talking about this. But I can't say the same for anywhere else. I'm now back at Greenwich High School. So that was my point, sort of why the question, because I don't even know if this is going to be a subject that she's taught in the next 4 years.
I'm sorry I lost you guys before, by the way. I'm having major tech issues today with everybody working from home. But I also think adding to the list of questions for the schools, what if there's a high school or for the high school, what student groups exist? Someone mentioned that before. And connecting with those groups would be in the future a good place to make some inroads at the schools. I don't know if Greenwich Country Day has. I know the high school had an Israel club, but I don't know if they're still around
anymore.
I don't think they could anymore because they couldn't find a teacher who was willing to sponsor them.
Allie's guidance counselor would probably But okay.
That was
I thought-
that was my understanding of why there's not an Israel club anymore.
That surprises me, but I also thought the student interest wasn't necessarily there, unfortunately.
So I mean, I don't know if this is true. I think Pam had expressed that the Israeli club had challenges because they used to meet after school, and when they changed the time schedule of the school, they could no longer meet after school, and they had to meet early in the morning, and nobody wants to meet earlier than early.
Well, I actually also heard from the high school, the Israel Club was quite successful because they would bring in speakers, and then there was some kind of a coordination between the teachers and if the students would show up and listen to the speaker, they kind of would get less homework or extra points or something. There was like a nice like back and forth and encouragement to actually participate in the Israel Club, and that was, I think, because of the head of the Israel Club. I don't know anything more about it, but these are just some of the rumors that I've heard.
Actually, a good idea would be because if UJA could be a resource, and through the teen programs that exist, and partnering with both the teen programs at UJA and then also some of the youth groups, the various youth groups that are in town, if almost you get ambassadors that are students who can then, either it's an Israel club or a Jewish culture club, and people can name it what they want. I know Rye Country Day has a newer Jewish culture club, and like Greenwich High has certainly had that. But if there's a way to give programming ideas and curriculum that then they can replicate, no matter where people are in school in Greenwich, right? Like, I think that's, kids are always looking for leadership opportunities. And so you can really plug into your different synagogues and plug into the teen programs that the UJA does. And you say, like, do you guys have this at your school? If not, you could give them the tools to go and suggest this club and bring people in, but there can be some general programming, or even come together and do it. I don't know.
So post-COVID, pre-COVID, there was I came in as president with a big energy towards that. And we had started that, and then COVID hit, and then it just, it just fizzled because they started it on Zoom. They were doing some Zoom stuff, it's
hard on Zoom.
We have to restart that. That's a good point, Marla.
And
they could be the ambassadors for, also the high school kids know precisely what's being said that's, anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, if you're not in conversation with kids on it regularly, you don't know what's being said, and you don't know how things are taught. So if you have a kid who's talkative and communicative to you, you'll hear about what specific teachers are doing. But if not, you don't know. But I do think eventually having some type of packet or a digital packet that you can then give to history departments at various high schools, that, by the way, when you're teaching about this, these are things to keep in mind in the way that you present it, so it doesn't offend Jewish students.
And my guess is that's already exists, that digital packet, someone's already created that, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's got to be out there.
Yeah.
It's kind of giving it to them with a fresh eye, with it packaged in a fresh way, that they think, oh, this is actually easy to communicate to my students, easy to incorporate in a curriculum in some way, shape or form. And the connections. And you guys connecting with them.
Yeah, it's like Arga said, it really is. It's a bunch of moms doing a lot of work and staying connected within their schools. So it really relies on individuals a lot. So that's a start for all of us, because we're already starting a conversation within our schools that we didn't start before. So that's a step in the right direction.
And I think before the next time we meet, in addition to we're all working on a Google Doc and just coming up with a great list of questions for our schools, we reach out to our Jewish friends in the schools to see, I have friends in different grades. Certainly I can ask, what's happening in the lower school, what's happening, to see what's going on out there. We can just start doing a little more intel research, get some intel and figure things out.
Well, yeah, and maybe it would be worthwhile because, I have anecdotal stories from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people when my daughter was in high school, and that's just me, right? Knowing these handful of stories. Maybe we do collect these stories that we hear, so we can not defend ourselves, but be aware that it is happening. And the only way we know, just like Marley said, is by talking to our kids. Not every kid is talkative. So not everybody knows those stories, but maybe it's worth jotting them down and keeping a little file when people are questioning why we're doing this. We're like, well, this is actually what's happening in the schools and nobody really knows it. And we don't want to make it an alarming situation, but it is fact. It's just like all those Black stories we heard last year, right? Like my daughter came home from a GA seminar, you know, in the field or whatever, and she was hysterical. Like, how could I have gone to a school like that? I didn't know those students felt that way. I mean, that's what's happening to Jewish students too. So anyway, I think we are on the same page. All right, well, thank you, everybody. So everyone we're gonna do a Google Doc, right, Claudia? We'll create some questions and then
Did we come up with a name?
What?
Did we come up with a name?
No.
Okay.
We can have a Google Doc for that too.
Right, put a section for name choices.
Yeah, it
I know
needs a
I've been-
name.
I know I've been quiet, but I want to say thank you because I've learned so much from you beautiful, smart women in this hour. So thank you for having me.
No, well,
in.
thank you, Allison. I've done something this once before. Every single person has a place and a voice and a role. Like each person makes the difference. And there's nothing too small. And of course we need lots of big, but we take the small too. Okay, thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Okay,
everyone, for
Rana.
answering the call.
For spearheading this. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.